All right, everybody, here we go. I am back live with Coffee and Chat, another special edition. This is just a short time that we're going to spend together on Black History Month while the focus on Black education. I know there's a whole bunch of consideration for this, and I'm really going to use some of the slides that I used for a prior video. I used this from a prior live, and I'm going to use some additional slides to talk about it because what we need to see is that um, Black History Month has its roots in Black education, but it also has some connections to how we view Black education. I think we can get two segmented. We can get a little too segmented with it. And so, just so you know, the previous video, I'm putting it here in the chats and the comments about Black History Month and what we actually did in the previous video, just so you can see it, just so you can know, just so you can have it on your radar and understand what it is. And so when we talk about Black History Month, right? We talk about Black History Month and a focus on education. It's hard to disconnect Black education from Black History Month. And what I mean by Black education as a definition, I'm talking about an education on the Black experience, an education on individuals, groups who made contributions to Black culture, Black heritage, Black history in itself. It's very difficult to talk about jazz and blues without getting into the connection that they have into the Black experience, and then turning another way to see the connection that they have as far as an influence on other aspects of American culture and worldwide culture. And so when we talk about Black History Month and Black education, that's one segment of a Black experience that I just shared, just with jazz and the blues. I haven't even gotten into any other aspects as far as music going down the line in a global perspective of the influence of a Black experience. But Black education, right, is not only the awareness of it, but it's also how do we pass down from generation to generation information about our experience as Black people in America, as Black people in different places throughout the world based upon this diaspora. Well, how do we share this experience? Because think about it, most Black people globally don't speak English, most speak Spanish based upon where we've come from and what we've gone through. That's what it is. And so just educating our own youth who may only have a limited experience of exposure to understand that there's more beyond their block, beyond their neighborhood, beyond where they live and what they see day to day. And so that's part of the focus on Black education for Black History Month. Black History Month was started by a Black educator. Let's be real and let's be honest. Dr. Carter G. Woodson, known as the father of Black history, gave Black History Month its genesis. He started it as Black History Week, right? And then it became what we know as Black History Month. And so when we start talking about Black history, Black education has a place in Black History Month, right? And so for us, especially when we talk about those who are involved in education, those who are involved in youth development, those who are involved as youth advocates, then we need to look at what's the emphasis of Black education within the celebration of Black history. What's the emphasis of it? And when we talk about it, we need to talk about what people are truly grasping, right? As far as what the Black experience is. I'll keep coming back to this, talking about the Black experience. It's difficult for someone to find validity, right? Validity in someone else talking about your own culture, right? Someone else outside of your culture, outside of your group, outside of your identity, talking about what you know as that experience. It's difficult for people to take that. I, in my own education in college, the work of Herbert Aptheker and Howard Zinn, both renowned professors in a time period where, on now, we were talking about people who were of a different background, who were historians, who were able to capture what happened in the slave revolts. Herbert Aptheker did a great job with that. We find it difficult for some people to understand how Howard Zinn was able to teach and connect some pieces of relevant understanding in what we understand as the slave experience. Not that he wrote a slave narrative or anything, but he captured it historically as a historian of what was part of the slave experience and contribution of Blacks through slavery as well as during the Reconstruction. And so just because someone isn't of the culture doesn't mean they can't follow the basics of research and handle presenting it. But for a lot of people, it's difficult to accept. Here is this Jewish professor, here is this European professor, here is this individual who's a white historian who's trying to tell me about a Black experience. That's difficult for some people to take. And what happens is we get a shutdown and people don't expect to have a Howard Zinn or an Albert Einstein or Herbert Aptheker working with African Americans, working at historically Black colleges and universities and sharing information, particularly information about a Black experience, and most certainly not from a Black perspective, right? And with Blacks counted as contributors to society. And so when we talk about that education, education requires us to be open. And so there's an openness to understanding what's happened and occurred in the past, to understand what's going on presently and how we can shape things going forward for the future. And so when we talk about a Black education, we're talking about an emphasis on not only those past contributions, but how can we contribute more? How can we add more to the story, right? And so I'm a big fan, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a big fan of technology. I'm a big fan of gamers. I'm a big fan of esports. I'm a big fan of Girls Who Code, Black Girls Code, all of that that helps engage our children and youth, our future leaders, helps engage them in potentially what we will come to know as the future of work. And so that's also part of why I'm putting an emphasis on this coming Saturday, tomorrow, on STEM. And so I'm sharing that link here in the comments. Hopefully you get it and you can see it. I'm sharing the emphasis on STEM, STEAM, and tech as part of, our Black education for our youth. Listen to this and understand this. According to Chalkbeat, right, which is educational website, Chalkbeat, Tennessee, as of 2021, get this, as of 2021, the STEM workforce, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, that entire realm, the STEM workforce, African Americans only account for 9% of that. 9%, less than 10% of the STEM workforce. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about how do we create a greater diversity in the demographics of those engaged in the STEM workforce. Put it this way, when we look at that, right, and we look at the dynamics of how we're not filling those roles, how we're not in place there, here's the other part of it, right? When we talk about it, African Americans, right? And I love this on Twitch because I'm a big fan of Twitch. African Americans, ages 13, right? 13 and older, 73% of them identify as gamers. 73% of African Americans 13 and older identify as gamers. This article gets further into how much African Americans and other minorities are attached to their devices and how they use them and how they're engaged with them. But here's what we're seeing: 73% of African Americans are engaged in what we know as gaming, right? 73%, but we only represent 9% of the STEM workforce. Even further, right? I'm gonna get into more of this tomorrow when I do the live stream tomorrow, but think about this. Not only is that who we represent, but out of all the video game industry, the percentage that we represent in the video game industry is so low, right? There are 428,000 jobs within the gaming industry. 428,000 jobs within the gaming industry. And out of all that, right? Out of all that, you're talking about Blacks, African Americans only represent 2% of the professionals in the gaming industry. 2%. Where 73% of those who are African American, 13 years old and older, right? We represent 73% of our people from preteen, early teens up, identify as gamers. And we only represent 2% of those who are in the gaming industry. So we are a greater balance of the consumers than we are among the creators. And in that sense, if we are greater in consuming than creating, then we have pretty much no chance of really shifting the dynamics of the depictions of African Americans, African American women, African American men in the gaming industry. And so when we look at that, we're still playing games, right? I love GTA, right? But some of the depictions in GTA are like They're stereotypical. They're like stereotypical. The the game the games have names and images that are stereotypical. We like, you're playing, you're like, well, wait a minute, hold up. Go back to GTA San Andreas and what that looks like, and how that plays out, and what does that what does that say about our people? You know what I'm saying? What does what does that say about us as African Americans? You know what I mean? What does that say about in our participation in it? Are we really trying to say that that's how it goes down? That's what it looks like. And so we've got to be careful if all the gangsters and all the cholos and all the depictions of who we are as people limit the understanding of other people in just this framework of gaming. Then you take the music and you associate the music with the images, and then you have these kids who have never been to a suburban area, never been beyond where they live, to find out that when we play games online, that these depictions of African Americans are not favorable, and they tend to cause us to look differently. And so then part of our work is to show something different. And so Black History Month is part of education. Let's show something different. Let's be different in how we show people what we have to offer. And so I believe Black History Month provides an opportunity for us to focus on education, focus on educating others, right? We've had this big talk about anti-racist, right? And, and being being an advocate and supporter for individuals who were, undergoing our whole experience as Blacks in America, and being Black and embracing their wokeness. We talked about all these different things, but that's not gonna change anything unless we start educating people on what the Black experience is, right? My Jewish friends aren't going to understand the threat of police brutality, driving while Black, until I educate them on that, right? My Latino friends are not going to understand in the same way, but they'll have some similar understanding. My Asian friends may not have the same understanding until I educate them, right? Until I educate them. And so with this whole premise of getting into Black History Month, we want to talk about educating people. We want to talk about educating people on the Black experience, right? Educating people from generation to generation, and really getting people to have an understanding, a takeaway, something they can walk away with and say, man, I'm glad I engaged in that. I'm glad I was involved in that. I shared it on Twitter earlier today, and I'll be honest, it makes sense to a degree that we can really begin to understand and grasp when we start talking about, we talk a lot about debating topics. We talk a lot about, having conversations and, getting into the thick of things and down to the nitty gritty. And I really believe that part of it just comes down to this: the tweet essentially is one sentence, and it came down to simply looking at, instead of just talking about things like we normally do, can we just go ahead and end the debate and have more of a dialogue, have more of a conversation, be more collaborative about it in our approach, in our whole gist of what we're trying to do. Can we get people more engaged in a conversation, in a dialogue about culture, about history, about our experiences, sharing our stories, sharing our origin, so that people can get to the meat of the matter and not find it to be something that's driven by hate or fueled by prejudice, but that it's coming from an authentic place of, I want you to understand where I'm coming from. That's where we should be coming from with Black education. I want you to understand where I'm coming from, what makes me me. It's the same thing that we expect when we talk about how people identify, right? When we talk about people, whether they identify as mixed race, biracial, whatever it may be, what makes me me, and I want you to understand how my identity is based upon me being a part of this experience. And so we want to have a dialogue with people on that. And that's one of the things that I hope people get when I'm sharing about this, that educating people is the point. Educating people on our experience, on our culture, all of that is the point. There's no way that we're going to put a stranglehold on rap music or jazz or anything like that. But it's a trip how that influence on cultures will go in sweeping waves, and people will embrace the music and not necessarily the culture that it comes from. And so let's educate people on that. People will embrace, sports talent. We're going to have the Super Bowl this weekend. People will embrace that sports talent, that natural athleticism, but they may not embrace the athletes for who they are and where they come from. Think about it like this. We're in a time where we can educate people and we can share with people and get them to have a different understanding of where we're coming from. And part of the point is really that we need more of a dialogue than a debate. We need more of a conversation than conflict. We need it as African Americans in our approach, in our teaching others, in our showing others, in our telling others, right? And some people may take offense in it. Some people may be taken aback by it. But the truth tears down all that other stuff. And so if we're open and honest about where a lot of this has come from, what a lot of our people have been through to get here and to make this happen, then we're going to be in a place where a lot of different questions are going to come up for us, and some people are going to come at us, but we have to also be able to brace all of that and stand on, here's where I'm coming from, here's what it's about, here's what I'm trying to do, and what I'm trying to accomplish. And if we're true and authentic to that, I believe we'll be able to get this done in a very good manner. Like I said, this is going to be some more of a conversation that we're going to have on Coffee and Chat with Rev Bruce tomorrow. 10 a.m. It'll be live on Twitch, live on Facebook. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'll just put the link in the chat. I want to thank you for joining. Thank you for being attentive. And God bless as we shall celebrate Black History Month. Peace.